beginning of the capillary is stronger than osmotic pressure. So here they're looking at net pressures and figuring it out. They're saying that there's a 26 osmotic pressure pulling in, but there's solutes out here, so it's pulling it out, and the average is 25. You don't have to worry about that. What we're saying here is we have 35 millimeters of mercury, or in my example, 40, pushing fluid out and solute. Here's the osmotic pressure of 25 pulling stuff back in. So we have this net loss of fluid and solute from the blood into the tissues. But as we move through, we get to the point where now the hydrostatic pressure, they say it dropped to 17, I said it dropped to 20. Our osmotic pressure is still 25, so it's still pulling, it's winning regardless, so it's gonna pull stuff back in. Here we have a net pressure pulling stuff back in of -8 millimeters. All right, don't get caught up on the numbers, because the numbers change depending on the solute concentration and person's blood pressure. So that's why I just use 40 and 20, it's easy. But the concept is what you need to know. At the beginning of the capillary, blood pressure wins and we force stuff out. As we move through the capillary, the pressure drops, now osmotic pressure wins, and it pulls all that fluid back in. And we get that fluid back in. If we don't, we have problems. Types of shock that we can have, circulatory shock means that the heart's not pumping and we can't force blood through the body. So the heart stops from a heart attack, it's not pumping, we go into circulatory shock. We can't circulate the blood. We can also lose blood and have hypovolemic shock. So if you're bleeding out, it doesn't matter how much your heart's pumping, if you don't have any blood to pump, you can go into shock. Vascular shock means the blood vessels are so dilated that the pressure drops. Remember, we have our blood pressure formula where blood pressure and peripheral resistance are on opposite sides of the equation. So if the peripheral resistance drops, the blood pressure drops. And so people that are really sick in ICU release chemicals that make them vasodilate, and their blood pressure drops so low that they can't pump it to their brain, and they're in a type of shock as well. It's not because they've lost blood volume, it's just because they can't keep the blood pressure up. And then cardiogenic, we already talked about, that's where the heart isn't working. Heart stopped.